Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bengal Bites, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from an honest, realistic perspective. As always, I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 114. This is the Week 12 recap episode where we're going to break down the Bengals' fourth loss in a row, this time at the hands of the New England Patriots, 26-20. This moves the Bengals' record to 3-8 on the season. Still not mathematically eliminated, but practically eliminated from playoff contention. The New England Patriots won their 9th game in a row with this one over the Bengals, and that moves them into first place in the AFC at 10-2. Patriots are 6-0 on the road. Bengals are 2-4 at home. And only losing by 6 points compared to what I was expecting, which was a 10-point loss at least, without Jamar Chase in this game. This was a relatively good performance, I thought, by the Bengals. Yes, it's not good to lose the game. You always want to win all the games that you're playing in, but considering the circumstances, considering the way, the trajectory these two teams had been on, it was a pleasant surprise that the Bengals were able to keep it close, and they had a chance to win at the end. That's all you really can ask for, especially from the Bengals this season. Winning is a hard task, but just keeping it close is an improvement on a lot of the games that they've had. We saw a lot of different players stepping up and making contributions who haven't played that much, including Dalton Risner, who played at right guard in place of Jalen Rivers and didn't call his name once throughout the game, so that was a good thing. If you're an offensive lineman, you don't want to hear your name called too much. We saw receivers taking the place of Jamar Chase, namely Andre Yosevich and Mitch Tinsley, stepping up, making big plays, as Mitch Tinsley always does, including his second touchdown on a fade ball. That's all Mitch Tinsley does is catch touchdowns on fades. We saw Chase Brown continue to run well, and he had over 100 yards, the first running back to get over like 50-something yards on the New England Patriots, much less 100 yards. So Chase Brown had a great day. Joe Flacco, kind of an up and down day. He didn't have terrible numbers, but also made a terrible decision throwing an easy Pick-6 interception to the Patriots. But defensively, Bengals were looking good, and they had a Pick-6 of their own. Geno Stone picked off Drake May on a confusing pass. Drake May started off the game. We'll get into this later, but Drake May started off really inconsistent and tentative. Looked like he was trying to throw half-speed balls to some of his guys. I don't know why. But Bengals defense stepped up, and not only did they force a turnover, which they hadn't done in a number of games, but also they stopped the Patriots in the red zone. They had multiple red zone stops where Patriots got it to 4th and goal at the 1-yard line twice, and the Bengals were able to stop them, prevent them from scoring any points, or at least holding them to a field goal. The Patriots scored 26. 2 of those came off of touchdowns, and then they had 4 field goals. Bengals had 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals. But holding the Patriots to 26, I said if the Bengals could keep the Patriots under 25, that would be pretty good. And, 26, that's not that bad. At least they didn't get to that 27 number that they had been exceeding for the last 9 games. So they broke that streak. They couldn't get the offense into the end zone enough times, obviously, by not scoring enough points. But even special teams, it felt like the Bengals were doing a pretty good job of covering on their kicks. Evan McPherson broke the Bengals franchise record with a 63-yard field goal right at the end of the first half. Bengals played that situation perfectly. They used their timeouts at the end of the Patriots' previous drive, left themselves just enough time to pick up a few yards on a couple of plays. They had a nice run by Chase Brown. I think they had another throw and catch to Andre Yosevich to set them up in field goal position. Evan McPherson, or That was T. Higgins, actually, that caught that pass over the middle to set them up for the field goal. And then with no wind in the stadium, Money Mac drills it from 63. They go in to halftime only down by 4 at that point because it was 17-13. And they kept it close all the way throughout the game. You thought maybe this would be the game the Bengals would be able to pull out that miracle comeback. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. But in some ways, it was encouraging. In other ways, it was a little bit discouraging because while Jamar Chase was out, they were going to rely more on T. Higgins. Unfortunately, T. Higgins got injured in the fourth quarter of this game. He went up to try to make a one-handed catch, and he couldn't brace himself as he fell onto the turf. And so he fell backwards and slammed his back of his head up against the turf. He was knocked out. He wasn't moving. That was a scary situation where everybody was not sure what was going on with T. Higgins, but he eventually got up after a couple minutes. They carted him off into the locker room. He was out for the rest of the game. And the Bengals' next game is going to be this coming Thursday on Thanksgiving against the Raiders in Baltimore. So given the fact that T. Higgins just suffered this concussion at the end of the game on Sunday, it's very unlikely that T. Higgins is going to be able to play on Thursday on such a quick turnaround. I wouldn't expect him to be available. So that means they're going to get Jamar Chase back, but then they're going to lose T. Higgins. We also saw injuries for both teams, something you never want to see. I don't care if it's the Bengals or whatever team they're playing. The Patriots had a number of injuries, especially on their offensive line. At one point, they had like 3 of their starting offensive linemen out of the game, including Will Campbell, their rookie left tackle. It's speculation is he may have I think it was his right ACL, may have been injured. They're going to get him to an MRI. But we saw a number of guys getting injured. The Patriots' left guard, I think, is also a rookie. He got injured and had to come out. Morgan Moses, the right guard for the Patriots, was dealing with some kind of an illness. There was a couple other special teams players for the Patriots who were injured, who had to come out of this game for various different injuries. And backup running back for the Bengals, Taj Brooks, he was evaluated for a concussion. I think there was one other player who might have had a minor injury that kept him out of the game. But the NFL is a war of attrition. They say the injury rate for everybody is 100%. If you keep playing in the NFL for long enough, you're bound to be injured. So it's not a surprise. But that's also the reason why I'm not in any big hurry to get Joe Burrow back onto the field. People say, oh, well, there's always a risk to get injured. And lots of people are worried that Joe Burrow is going to re-injure his surgically repaired toe if he tries to go out and play too early. And other people will say, well, you could get injured on any play, so it doesn't matter if he just had surgery. He could get injured even if he didn't have surgery, which is true. But also, that's another reason why at 3-8, season is basically over. Why risk it? And the counter argument was, well, that's what he gets paid to do. He's a football player. He should go out and play football. But at the same time, he's the most valuable, highest paid member of the football team. And, what is the point of trying to go out and win games with your most valuable player and risking injury when there's no Super Bowl on the horizon, there's no championships, there's nothing really to play for? But getting ahead of myself, after the game, Zach Taylor keeps saying the same things over and over because, nothing has changed, and Zach Taylor is always very consistent in the messaging. But when they're losing 8 out of the last 9 games, the messaging is very depressing. It's always, well, we just couldn't make enough plays to win the game, and we just got to find a way to get a win. Got to find a way. Got to, just get a little momentum, and then we'll be all set. He keeps talking about momentum. They got to get the momentum. He talked about how making that field goal right before halftime gave him a bunch of momentum or whatever. None of that shit means anything. There's no momentum. You can't get momentum from winning a game. So, thankfully, one of the reporters after the game, he was talking about momentum up and down. Ben Baby from ESPN says, Zach, at 3-8, what are you trying to build momentum for? And his response was to win a game, which doesn't make any sense. That's obviously why do you need momentum to win a game? But whatever. don't listen to Zach Taylor. That's what I would say. I'm sure none of the players do, but they, defensively, they were much improved. They didn't get completely run over. They were able to stop the Patriots from breaking a bunch of tackles and having like explosive runs every other play. I'll give them credit. They didn't miss as many tackles as they had been. And they were playing some different players. They played Jalen Davis at nickel cornerback. He has been inactive every game. They called him up from the practice squad this week. So a little bit better tackling out of the Bengals linebackers. Bengals defensive linemen were playing much better at the point of attack. They weren't getting blown away. Guys like TJ Slayton, BJ Hill, Chris Jenkins, McKinley Jackson. I thought they all played much better than they had been. And I don't know, maybe that's a function of Patriots offensive line being a bunch of backups who weren't really that great. We also saw, maybe because of that, Bengals defensively started to blitz a lot more. They were sending Geno Stone off the edge a number of times, and he was able to get in Drake May's face or stop the run before they could get it going. We also saw Jalen Davis made a sack on a nickel corner blitz off the outside where Drake May just didn't have the answers. He's a second-year quarterback. He's still young. There were a number of times where Drake May just didn't seem to know where to go with the football. The Bengals defense had him confused. And so that was good to see. That's something that the Bengals defense really hadn't been able to do all season, is put pressure on the opposing quarterback, make them kind of panic a little bit. And that's what Drake May did. And while the improvement was great, it was good to see a competent performance by most of the Bengals. There were still obviously not enough plays made by the Bengals to win the game. And maybe the biggest difference maker in this game was the fact that they couldn't stop Hunter Henry, the tight end for the Patriots. He had a career high in receiving yards in this game. Let's look at the box score real quick. Hunter Henry, 7 catches for 115 yards, 1 touchdown, long of 28. But there were a number of times where he was just wide open, running across the middle of the field. The linebackers for the Bengals couldn't keep a very good track of him. And in the first half, there was especially one miserable play where the Bengals just forgot he was on the field. They let him go. Nobody was within 15 or 20 yards of Hunter Henry. He just basically walked into the end zone for a touchdown on this play. That was a little bit disappointing. And then right after that, I think that made it 10-10 tie game, something like that. But it was close, and then all of a sudden, right after that, Joe Flacco threw a horrible pick-6 interception that the Patriots ran back for another touchdown. So 2 touchdowns back-to-back for the Patriots, with just mental breakdowns on both sides of the ball for the Bengals. That gave them the lead, and that was eventually they held the lead for the rest of the game. Patriots got another field goal before halftime to get 17 points on the board. Bengals, to their credit, managed to clock at the end of the first half to make it 17-13 going into halftime. Still a close game, but the Bengals jumped out to an early 10-0 lead. Everything was looking great for the Bengals. They got an early defensive stop. They forced the Patriots to punt. They had a nice drive of their own, including a nice pass on the sidelines to Andre Joseph, toe tap, got both feet in bounds before he went out and made the catch. Chase Brown had some nice runs. They had to settle for a long field goal, couldn't get deep enough to score a touchdown. But early on, the game started off pretty much as well as it could have for the Bengals. They got that early field goal to go up 3-0. Then they got some stops. Then they got the pick-6 interception by Geno Stone on Drake May. It was a pass over the middle to Hunter Henry, where this was another one where Drake May, it looked like he was trying to guide it, like he was throwing a paper airplane. Like he wasn't throwing the football, especially early on in this game in the first half. He wasn't throwing it with the kind of velocity and decisiveness you would expect. He was kind of just trying to loft the balls in there. And some of them, especially early, there was a pass where he threw it in between 2 Patriots receivers, but it wasn't really directly at either one of them. And it was like, who was that pass even to? You couldn't even tell because it just landed in the middle of an open space. You couldn't tell if it was to the running back, to the tight end. it was weird. And he was throwing a number of passes like that where he wasn't quite like stepping into it. And at some times that's good. Like you don't want to fire missiles at guys and break their fingers off. But there's you got to have a happy balance between those two things. But everything was looking great. Paycor Stadium was going crazy. Bengals up 10-0. Patriots respond with an 11-play, 70-yard drive that was capped off with that easy, way too easy, Hunter Henry touchdown from, I think it was about 28 yards out. Yeah, 28-yard touchdown, not quite in the red zone. That made it 10-7 Bengals. Then just a few plays later, 2 minutes later, Joe Flacco threw that pick-6, and the way that the camera angle had it on CBS, it was so obvious that that Joe Flacco was going to throw this pick-6. Like you could see it coming in slow motion. He was looking down the field at T. Higgins, who was off the screen at that point. But you can see it, Joe Flacco was looking over to the right side, and the defender for the Patriots was kind of just hanging out, hovering over on the right side, waiting for Joe Flacco to look his direction. And you could just see Joe Flacco kind of hesitate for a second, then turn and throw it out to the right, and the Patriots defender just read him like a book. Came sprinting out, got into perfect position, jumped the route in front of, I think it was Chase Brown or Taj Brooks, but I think that was Marcus Jones. Yeah, Marcus Jones. He's the punt returner, special teams returner for the Patriots, but also plays on defense. 33-yard pick-6, and immediately as soon as Joe Flacco threw the ball, he just like looked up at the sky like, oh my God, why did I throw that? He knew it was a bad pass. The Bengals had no chance to make a tackle, so that was an easy walk-in touchdown. 2 plays in a row, or 2 touchdowns almost in a row for the Patriots that put them up 14-10 over the Bengals. Patriots were able to get another 11-play, 67-yard drive. Couldn't get it into the end zone. They had to settle for a field goal to go up 17-10 with about 30 seconds left to go in the first half. And that was where Bengals did a good job of using their timeouts on that Patriots offensive drive so that they couldn't run it all the way down to halftime. That set them up for that 63-yard field goal. So only down by 4 points going into halftime. Could have been worse, Unfortunately for the Bengals, they came out pretty slow in that third quarter. They couldn't really get much going offensively. Their first drive, they went 4 plays. They got 1 first down, but then they got stopped the next series of downs, had to punt it away. Patriots, they had a 16-play, 64-yard drive that got into Bengals territory, but they ended up giving it back on, this was when they had it at the Bengals 1-yard line. There was a defensive pass interference penalty on Dax Hill that gave them, the Patriots, the ball at the Bengals 5-yard line. There was another big play on this one. The Bengals started off holding the Patriots to 3rd and 11, but on 3rd and 11, Drake May completed a pass deep over the middle to Demario Douglas, or Pop Douglas, for 37 yards. Barrett Carter, this was one of the plays, a number of plays Barrett Carter got beat on in the passing game. Hunter Henry was kind of taking advantage of Barrett Carter and Geno Stone a number of times. They just couldn't guard him or Pop Douglas. So that 37-yard pickup on 3rd and 11 kept the Patriots drive going. They had then the next play, a 14-yard end around Pop Douglas, picked up another first down. Then the next play, they had a 35-yard defensive pass interference penalty on Dax Hill, gave the Patriots all the way from the Bengals 40 down inside the Bengals 5-yard line. Then the Patriots ran 4 plays, couldn't score the touchdown, but on 4th and 1 from the Bengals 1, Dax Hill got called for a second defensive pass interference penalty on the drive that gave the Patriots another first down at the 1-yard line. But then there was a offensive pass interference penalty on Mac Hollins where he tried to do a pick play to get Hunter Henry open, but he made it too obvious that it was offensive pass interference. That moved them back 10 yards. They picked the 10 yards back up on a little shovel pass to Hunter Henry. But 3rd and goal and 4th and goal from the 1-yard line, Ramondre Stevenson was not able to pick up those yards, especially 4th and 1. It was a weird decision by the Patriots offense. They ran it out of shotgun. It looked like maybe a run-pass option, and Ramondre Stevenson got tackled by like 4 guys as soon as he got the ball. So probably not a great read by Drake May. He probably should have kept it and tried to pass it or run it himself, but whatever would have been better than handing off to Ramondre Stevenson, because Geno Stone was coming off the edge, Miles Murphy and Joseph Osai were right there. Like Bengals had like 4 guys ready to tackle the ball carrier from the Patriots on that one. So great job by the Bengals to keep the Patriots out of the end zone and keep the lead only to 4 yards. But unfortunately for the Bengals, they had to settle for a punt after picking up a couple first downs, couldn't keep the drive going, gave the ball back to the Patriots, who eventually responded with a 8-play, 50-yard drive for a field goal that made it 20-13. Going into the 4th quarter, Bengals were not able to respond with any points of their own. They had to punt it away after their next drive, gave it back to the Patriots, who had a 14-play, 89-yard drive. Ryan Rico had a nice punt. Overall, Ryan Rico had a pretty nice punting day where he was able to pin the Patriots deep inside their own territory. He did have 1 shank and 1 touchback, but otherwise pretty good special teams day in punting the ball for Ryan Rico. But on this first drive of the 4th quarter for the Patriots, 14 plays, 89 yards, moved it all the way down the field. They had to settle for another field goal. At that point, they were up by 7, and instead of going for it on 4th and short and not getting it like they had previously, they kicked another field goal to make it a 10-point lead. So that was their 3rd field goal of the game for the Patriots. Bengals responded on a very tough drive of their own. 7 plays, 44 yards. I think it was, I guess they don't count penalty yards in the drive yardage, but whatever. So Bengals scored a touchdown on this second to last drive of the 4th quarter, where they got Mike Gesicki involved. Mike Gesicki had a number of good catches, and this was his first game back from that pectoral injury that he suffered. But they completed a pass to Andre Iosivas. So on the 2nd down and 10 pass, Joe Flacco completed it out to the left to Mike Gesicki. But on that pass, Joe Flacco, on his follow-through, his hand hit the hand of one of the Patriots' defensive linemen. And you could see him coming off the field, waving to the trainers, and he was looking at his right index finger, and it was bent up awkwardly. The trainer came over and kind of tugged on that finger to pop it back into place, but he had a dislocated index finger on his throwing finger, which, if you have much experience throwing a football, the index finger on your throwing hand is one of the most important fingers, because that's the last finger that leaves the ball when you're throwing it and you're doing your release. That index finger is kind of pointing at your target. So injuring that finger of all fingers makes it very difficult to throw the football. But Joe Flacco only missed 1 play. And to his credit, Jake Browning came in for that 1 play and completed a nice pass to Andre Iosivas, who was also injured on that play. He went down. It turned out to be a stinger injury, shoulder injury, a little bit of a nerve tweak. I've never had a stinger. That was apparently Andre Iosivas' first time he had a stinger, so he didn't really know how to react, but he came out of the game for the rest of this series. And then, unfortunately, on the very next play, Joe Flacco came back into the game. He threw a pass deep to T. Higgins, which is crazy, the fact that he just injured his finger on his throwing hand. Then he comes back in 1 play later and goes deep to T. Higgins up the right sideline. It was a decent pass, a little bit behind him, and so this was the play where he hit his head on the back of the field. Play was stopped. They had to get T. Higgins out of there. So that meant no T. Higgins, no Jamar Chase, no Andre Iosivas for a few plays. They had Mitch Tinsley and Charlie Jones in there. And the next play after that, Joe Flacco comes in, throws a 17-yard touchdown pass to the left corner to Mitch Tinsley. Another remarkable catch by Mitch Tinsley. He was going up against Gonzalez for the Patriots, their best cornerback, and he made a big play on them. He was fired up. Everybody in the stadium's going crazy. At that point, there was about 4.5 minutes left to go, and the Bengals were only down by 3. So if they get a defensive stop, get the ball back, they can make something happen. Patriots respond with a 13-play, it says 27-yard drive, but I think the yardage must not include some penalties or something, because the Patriots ended up converting a 52-yard field goal. Actually, that's not true. The Patriots, I mean, it is true they converted the field goal, but on the kick return, this was the worst time for the Bengals to give up a long kick return. Patriots returned it all the way out to their 40-yard line, so they didn't have that far to go to get into field goal range. But they picked up a couple first downs. Stephon Diggs on 3rd and 11. This is another 3rd and long that the Bengals defense, even though they did so many good things, 3rd and long has been kind of their Achilles heel recently. Stephon Diggs caught the pass on DJ Turner over the middle to pick up that 3rd and 11. And then after that, they had to settle for a 52-yard field goal. So that made it 26-20 with just under 2 minutes left to play. So the Bengals still had a chance. I think they still had at least one timeout remaining, down by 6 with about 1 minute and 50 seconds left to go. Bengals did everything they could. They completed pass after pass to pick up the first down on. They picked up a 4th and 1 with a Chase Brown run. Then they called timeout. The Patriots were kind of in a prevent defense. They were giving the Bengals the short underneath passes. Just don't give up the big touchdown, because obviously the Bengals needed a touchdown to win the game, being down by 6. Patriots were okay allowing them to get within field goal range because it didn't matter. Bengals took advantage of that. They completed pass to Andre Yosevich, who came back into the game for 19 yards over the middle. And then on 4th and 8, there was a pass where Mitch Tinsley caught it on the sideline. It looked like it could have been an interception by Marcus Jones, but it went through his hands. Mitch Tinsley caught it as he was falling out of bounds, which is a great play because that stopped the clock. Bengals didn't have any timeouts at that point, so they would have had to spike the ball, but they didn't have to do that. They kept the ball, kept it going. They got it all the way to the Patriots' 26-yard line, but that was where their luck kind of ran out. Then after that, they had 3 incomplete passes in a row. Bengals were trying to argue for a pass interference penalty on Mike Gesicki on 4th and 10, but the officials didn't bail them out. It would have been, it was a close call. All these calls are close, but it wasn't like a super obvious pass. If you go back and look at it in super slow motion, you can say, oh, the defender got there a little bit early, but it wasn't super obvious that it was defensive pass interference. So I thought it was a good no call to not kind of bail the Bengals out in that situation. He wasn't going to Gesicki was not going to catch the ball either way. So it would have been kind of a bailout penalty. They got lucky in that Jacksonville Jaguars game to get that defensive pass interference penalty on 4th down, but no such luck on this one. Bengals go down with the loss and fall to 3 and 8. At this point, the question is going to be, does Joe Burrow come back for the Thanksgiving game? I think if he's healthy enough to come back, he probably will play, just because that's going to be one of the most watched games of the NFL season, and that's why the players play the game, is to have people watch them play. They're performers. They want to go out there and put on a show, and I don't fault Joe Burrow for wanting to do that. I also wouldn't fault Joe Flacco for wanting to go out and play against his old team, the Baltimore Ravens, but he's going to be dealing with that finger injury on top of the shoulder injury. And I think in the moment, Joe Flacco, he felt fine. The adrenaline probably kicked in. He couldn't feel anything, but it's probably going to be sore the next couple days, having dislocated your finger. I've never done it myself, but I can't imagine it's going to feel great. But after this game, it was hard to feel great as a Bengals fan. I didn't feel terrible because, like I said, they did better than expectations. They were in it. They had a chance. So there was some excitement, at least. They didn't get totally blown off the field and down by like 3 touchdowns and nothing left to play for. They had a chance. So you looked in the stands were still full of people. Nobody left early for this game, to the credit of, there was a lot of Patriots fans there too, but no Bengals fans. Previous games, if they went down by like 3 touchdowns, the stadium would be empty by the end of the game. Everybody was still there to the end, but the Bengals just couldn't pull it off. And like I said, Joe Burrow, Joe Flacco, it doesn't really matter if they're not able to win games. There's no incentive. I know the players and the coaches don't think about, let's just tank and try to get the best possible draft picks. But thinking from the big picture, they're basically eliminated at this point. So winning some meaningless games is only going to hurt them in the long run. But of course, Zach Taylor isn't thinking that way. He's just going to keep repeating the same things over and over. And so the players keep repeating the same things. Zach Taylor says that all these losses are just preparing us and making us better and stronger for when we do turn the corner and we do start to win the games. This will all be worth it. But at this point in the season, it's too late. Like, they've already basically been eliminated. There's nothing to turn the corner for. So keep talking about, we just got to get some momentum and we just got to win some games. For what? Please, you don't need to necessarily win all the games, because we saw the Browns, unfortunately, beat the Raiders. They are tied with the Bengals for a record at 3-8. Some of these teams who are at the bottom of the league, they're starting to pile on wins. And hey, if the Bengals keep losing, like I said, the draft pick keeps getting better and better. I know the players and the coaches don't want to think that way, but that's the reality. If they want to get better as a team, part of that, you might have to get worse. But overall, this game was mostly forgettable. I wouldn't say it was a great performance by the Patriots. They did enough to win the game and get out of town unscathed. The Bengals, they played better, but there were a couple of horrible breakdowns by Joe Flacco with the Pick-6 and defense who seemingly forgot about Hunter Henry on a number of plays. So it wasn't a perfect game by either side. Bengals didn't come out on top. And so we won't have time to kind of dwell on this one too long. This game is going to be like out of sight, out of mind. Nobody's going to remember this game at the end of the season. It's just going to be another loss that piled on top of other losses. But that means there's going to be a quick turnaround, no time to feel sorry for themselves when they play again this Thursday. We'll be back to preview that upcoming Thursday game to see who's going to play. Will Joe Burrow play? We'll probably have an answer before game time, but it's going to go down to the wire again. I'm sure Zach Taylor's going to try to keep things secret and not announce who's going to play and who's not, but they're going to have Jamar Chase back, definitely, and he's hopefully going to be rested and ready to go and show what he can do against the Ravens. But that's going to do it for this episode. If you've listened all the way to the end, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, thumbs up, do all the stuff. Tell me what you think. Leave me your comments down in the comments section, or you can email me, bengalbitespodcast@gmail.com, to let me know what did I miss. But we'll be back with the preview before you know it. So until then, I'm going to leave you with a hoo-day and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.